Hello, and thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast. My name is Billy Newman. I'm here with Marina Hansen. How you doing, Marina?
Hey, Billy, I'm doing well.
Thanks so much for recording this podcast with me. I
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me on your show.
It's cool. We had a couple different photographs we were going to talk about today. Some of the photos that we had from like that last trip that we did out to Eastern Oregon, and some of the stuff in Plush and like the Heart Mountain area. And then we had like another old photograph that I was going to talk about that I just posted the other day up on Instagram, and I think I posted that one out too. But I've been working on like this new system, and I think you and I had talked about it a few times. And I'll probably explain it more, or we'll talk. Maybe this is kind of what the podcast will be, as I was talking about like the different photos that we put up over the day. But I've been trying to figure out a way of making it more of a set of photographs, or like a limited number of images that are closer to my top portfolio. And then I like rotate through those faster. And I know you and I talked about that a bunch, but that's what I'm going to try and start doing more with the photos that I post.
Yeah, I think that's a cool idea. I notice other photographers doing that on different sites like Instagram.
That's what I see a bit too. Yeah, is a shorter section of photographs that they rotate through. I've seen a few photographers top images like a handful of times, like they're remarketing those images again. And I kind of want to try and do a similar type of thing where if you're seeing my pictures today and each day, you'll see one of my best pictures that'll kind of run through, and
Yeah.
then there'll be some other pictures too. That's sort of the idea, something like that. But I've been kind of writing about it a little bit and trying to figure out which order to do. But I want to try and include more of these podcast links. I want to try and have some of those in the rotation of stuff more that go out into the social media run of content that we're trying to put out. I could substantiate one a day. There's probably a link to something else on YouTube that could be one a day, or a link to somewhere on a website sometime once a day. But most everything else I want to be like a cool photograph, a handful of them of like a top 200 list is what I'm making. A bunch of that is your photos, really. I'm trying to take a bunch of the photographs that you'd taken, like cool pictures of Billy working with the camera, or
Yeah.
Billy doing something outside, or doing little stuff that's behind the scenes of making other little pictures. And I'm trying to include those things too, and have a bunch of them be like one of these pictures a day that you'll see is like kind of behind the scenes doing something with camera stuff or working with whatever. And then other ones are like cool pictures that we'd made. Other ones are like ones that we're making right now. That kind of thing. That would be
Yeah.
cool.
I think it's a cool way to have it broken up
I've been
or have
trying
like
to,
more
yeah.
content going out, but more variety
I
in
want
what's
the
going
I
out.
want it to be tighter. Is sort of the whole idea, like where it's whatever like I'm trying to create or whatever kind of communication I'm making. I want that to be like a tighter, more developed sort of thing. I really like the amount of stuff that we put out. I really like that. Like I like how full or like how many photos that we've been able to put up like on Mastodon, that social networking service that we've been messing around with. Like going through and just seeing like, oh, I have like 600 really good, very postable photos ready to go just from all the work I've been doing over the last year or 2 years. So it was cool taking all that and just flooding that new service with a ton of content or a ton of the new photos that we have. It was just really neat to be able to do that because we have like so many picked out, so many edited. And so I want to kind of go through that, and I want to pare it down to new stuff and the best stuff. Excuse me. But the newest stuff and the best stuff, and I want to try and roll that off over the year, right? If that makes a little bit of sense, like sort of like how other artists would kind of do that, where they'd work on one kind of topic a lot for a year, and they'd make something out of that, and then they kind of shift and move a little bit, and then
Sure,
kind of
into a
continue
new
on in like
project.
a different thing, yeah, something like that maybe. But at least we talked about it a bit too, where we just kind of want to like focus in on whatever art angle we're sort of growing on during that
Mm-hmm.
time and get better at that, make a lot of stuff in that, and then kind of, I don't know, wrap it up, or you're just whatever it feels time that you're going to be moving on and like doing some other kind of creative thing, kind of get into that again and build a bunch of stuff in that. But I want to try and do more of that, where we go through and we sort of shift like our creative perspective a little bit, or just some of the things that we're working on. So we make like different types of choices, make new types of photographs, see new places. That seems to be a big part of the diversity of a portfolio.
Yeah, it seems to be all the difference is getting to be
Yeah.
able to be out in those places.
Yeah. It seems like that's a big part of it. I really want to make sure that we're able to see a bunch of places this springtime. It'd be cool. But one of the places we saw, this was 2 years ago. This was during a period really where it was hard for us to get around. It was hard for us to to go see a ton of things, and I had less equipment than I would have had maybe at other times too, because I know that the digital camera that I had was the autofocus stuff was all kind of messed up. It wasn't really working anymore, and it wasn't really that great to begin with. And that was during a period where I was shooting a ton of film. It was in 2014 in the springtime, and I was shooting with that N80 that we were talking about, maybe in the last podcast, maybe in another podcast, but that N80 film camera with a 50 millimeter lens, and that's what I shot this photograph of the Foxglove with, and that's one that I put up on Instagram just a day or so ago. But that was a really pretty photograph, and I loved that drive that we took. I think it had Ektar film in the camera at the time, which I grant a lot of the really nice color representation and those cool green blues in the background. Probably came from like some good film stock, but it was really cool how close we got to such a pretty picture with that, and which is such simple equipment. I mean, maybe that's like $200 worth of SLR equipment, and it's really some or one of my favorite photographs still.
Yeah.
And a handful of those other images were from that N80 and like a pretty simple set of prime lenses with wide apertures. That's all I was using. So it's kind of cool. I really like that image, and I think it's been one of the images that I've got the most compliments on, or the most comments, and like, oh yeah, that picture of the whatever thing. I like that one, but it's cool. I liked it. I posted it just because it has such a springtimey feel to it. I think this was taken in June, so we have just a little bit more before the foxglove bloom in the hills around here. I've already started to see a little bit of the Oregon grape. Have you seen that? Like the yellow flowering
Oh,
plant?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah, the Oregon
I've
grape.
seen
I
it
think
on a
it's
few
the
trips.
Oregon State flower.
It is.
That's cool. But we're gonna see a ton more of it. Probably like, well, this year's been so wet, so I'm not really sure what the weather's gonna do. But we're gonna see a ton more of that too on the ground covering on the land side or the mountain side. It's cool as you start to drive through some of this coastal range over here. You see a ton of that kind of flower. But that'll be kind of cool too. We should try and get some photographs of that before the foxglove comes in.
Yeah, that's a fun one to see when you're driving through kind of cool mountain road areas.
I like seeing it a lot too. You see it in a lot of places. It seems to stand out a bit where there's been clear cutting before. Where a lot of the
Mm.
trees have been removed, and there's some ground covering that's coming up in the area over it. But you see a lot of that Oregon grape kind of covering and filling in a lot of sections of the landscape. You see it around here in town too, and you look up on the hillside, and the flowers are so yellow and vibrant. They just really stand out. But it's cool, like how white and pink and purple and magenta those foxglove flowers can be when they're in bloom in the springtime.
Yeah, they're really beautiful. They're a cool flower.
I hope that we get a lot of it this year, given how wet it's been, how much moisture there's going to be, or how well fed they'll be with water at least. Some of these foxglove plants on the side of the hills, because I know that's a big problem. Or their bloom ends when their hydration, and so I'm hoping that we get more spring flowers this year, at least given with all this rain, right?
Gotta
But
make up for it
I
with some
hope it makes
flowers.
up for it a little bit. But it was a really pretty photo. I like that one a bunch. That was a pretty one. The other photo that I put up was one of you, Marina. It was
Hey.
a new one that I had worked on a little bit, and it was pretty cool. It was shot with the 80 to 400 with the D3, and that was when we were hiking around out on the Coyote Hills. It was a really pretty evening. I love like going out and taking pictures during that time too, because we had the rolling clouds kind of moving through, and it's a really pretty thing in Oregon in the springtime where we have different layers, different strata clouds, and they kind of have different characteristics, like the lower ones from the higher ones, and just the way that they look. But it's cool in this set case because you see the different like colors of light that are in those different layers of clouds. Like we saw a few times out there in the evening, as the sun would shine through, there'd be some that were shaded, some that were lit, or some that were higher that were like denser, like bigger rain clouds that
Mhm.
were floating over, and then other ones underneath it would be like white and more puffy. But it was cool kind of seeing those different dynamics, especially like in that time lapse that we put together.
Oh,
We just
right,
shot it on the
yeah.
iPhone, but you look at it and you see kind of the way that the clouds sort of move in, hit the mountain, and sort of build up or break apart. It's just really interesting to see the weather pattern move when you don't quite notice it as it's moving slowly by you.
Yeah. I really appreciated that about this trip, just how beautiful all of the elements in the sky were.
Yeah,
It was really
it was a
cool.
very pretty part. There's a lot of color in the land too, and I appreciate like anytime that there's a lot of clouds out. I kind of like that the most when we get like a low angled sun
Mhm.
and a lot of clouds because that's when you get the most unique colors in the sky. All right, it's when you get like
Definitely.
big elements, big unique phenomena of sunsets in the sky. That's like one of the best things to photograph because it really doesn't exist anytime after that. You know, it's only like a few minutes and it's only like that really that one time in a lot of ways. So it seems like a special kind of one-off thing in photography and landscape photography specifically to sort of have that as an element that you're able to bring in to the photograph or make more unique in it. That's one thing I always feel is really special when it really works is when there's some cool phenomena going on in the sky that you get to capture only for a few minutes or only from the spot in a certain way. I think that's really cool. But it seemed like we got a good bit of that when we were out there. Like there's a few of them that I have that's like the ground, and you just see that sort of springtime storm system as it goes up thousands of feet, really, over the top of Heart Mountain. But you really seem to see the scale out there in
Yeah.
Eastern Oregon as it goes up, and you see the way that the light is as it's really dark underneath, and you can only imagine that the light's just being blocked by that huge, like thousands of feet of cloud as it comes down to the bottom there, where it's really dark and wet and blue looking. It's cool, but it's really neat to see. But I have a few photos of that where you see like all the or just the way that the storm cloud looks as it goes up, but as the sun's hitting it from the side angle, and you see the rim rock of the mountain of Heart Mountain over there. It's cool.
It was really cool. Yeah, it was a beautiful trip. It was great getting to be out for that evening when everything just seemed to line up perfectly with the
Yeah,
light and there being a lot of cool clouds around, but it wasn't clouds that were raining on us.
that's something that you get in March a bit, where you get a few different opportunities. And we saw a few different types of weather on that trip too, where it was
Yes,
hailing
we
on us, it
did.
was raining on us, it was clouded out, or it was blown out. So there's a few different times where it was pretty tough. It was kind of silly. But we had a few good, nice evenings too, and then you get those textured kind of stormy skies in the springtime where the weather seems to change every 25 minutes. So it was really pretty. Yeah, we had a really nice sunset. I think maybe two of those nights,
Yeah.
and it was cool this early in March too. The sagebrush is really well hydrated this year, especially probably because there's so much water, and there seems to be a lot more water in that area than there had been in other years past. Like this year's a heavier water year for Eastern Oregon than other past years. Like when we drove by that lake or that dried marsh,
Right.
there's a lot of water there. Now we recognize now that it's really more of a seasonal area that it's dry. Like it is dry for a section of the year, but a
Mhm.
section of the year in the wet time of year it is wet. Seems like every year. But man, this year it seems like it's way more wet. Like or there's water all the way up to the rim of the road,
Yeah.
which I'd never really seen or really even seen sign of that there had been that much water up there. So it seems like there's a lot more water. Like there's other parts where you drive through and there's like water kind of like on both sides of the road in this like lowland section out there. Do you remember that? We drove through there, but it's interesting. You see like it's kind of a pond and it's got like a little pipe, like a culvert pipe that goes underneath the road that kind of
Right.
connects the two. It's just sort of the way that the shape of the land is and it naturally collected water there, so they had to do something about it. But you see where most of the time it's pretty far back from the road, and in the past I'd really almost never seen anything there. Like in the summertime you drive by, there's no
Oh
water
yeah,
at
it's
all there.
empty.
Absolutely, yeah. But right now it's like almost an
It's
acre
almost full.
of water, yeah, on both
It's
sides,
almost
right
on the
up,
road.
right up to the road. Yeah, right up to the road. So it's like it's just weird how seasonally it can be a lot different, especially years like that or this when there's a lot of water.
It was really interesting. Yeah, just completely different. I remember the first time that you
Yeah.
took me out in that area and it was the most dry that I'd ever seen that area.
Oh
And now
yeah, right.
this year is
That
the
was this time. That
wettest.
was a week from now.
Right? Yeah.
In perspective, yeah, and that was
Yeah,
bone
it was
dry
right
at
at the
the
same
time. We
year.
like walked all the way out. We were digging, or we drove the
Yeah,
truck
we
out
drove
to
the
the
truck
center
on
of
it.
it. Yeah, it was just dust. We like reached, yeah, way different than what it is right now. Yeah, it's just water. It was mud up until the road. It was kind of
It
like tough
was.
to walk around, and it was so wet.
Yeah, I had to go around the edges.
Yeah, so that was yeah. It's interesting just how different it is this year. But I think that's the same way for like Heart Mountain Lake and a few of those other lakes down there that I was learning a bit about, and I'd heard about it in the past, and like the same with the Alvord Desert, that Playa Desert that we talked about that we have some photos of. When we were camping out at the Coyote Hills, that was sort of the rim of what used to be an old lake that I think was left over from the Ice Age, like after the Pleistocene era. But I'm confused about this too. I really need to learn about my old geology and old geography. But it was interesting, like looking at the landscape and how we had learned about, like on Heart Mountain. When you look out, there's like a little plaque that says like this used to be the high water line of an old lake that was here 10,000 years ago, and now it's gone. Right, and you can see when you look at a map too that would be like the low lying section of a water basin where it'd fill up a lot of water it would hold there. And as you look across Oregon, you see where Eastern Oregon, which is now just high desert, would have once been like a whole bunch of really big lakes connected with each other with like pretty small spaces in between. It's just interesting how different that land is now.
It's really interesting. It was cool looking at the maps with you and kind of getting to see that more. And
Yeah,
you can see it when you're out there too. You can
yeah,
kind of
you
tell
really
when
can.
you're thinking about it. You go, oh yeah,
Yeah,
that is where the edge of this giant lake would
where
have
we
been.
were would have been above water, but down lower, like on the road, and then like down just a little bit back. I think there's a few pictures that kind of illustrate it. That would have been the high water mark of the old lake. It's just so strange that it would have been that whole area out there used to be water. And then if you think about like that, and then down in Nevada, it's the same sort of landscape where you see all these old remnants where there was water there, but there's really no water system to get water there. It's really strange, but it's interesting like how there are deposits there all over this section of the Northwest. You see stuff up in like the Columbia River Gorge too, like the old remnants of that. But it was just really strange seeing that out there, and it was cool walking around on the Rim Rock when we were taking photos out there that evening. But it was cool. I like taking that picture. It was like a compressed photo with like the 400 millimeter. I was zoomed in on the with the D3, and I took like a handful of pictures. The picture of you, and this picture that I posted up on Instagram, I like it. The little like parallels. I've been trying to work on that as I'm shooting. I'm trying to like come back and have like parallels of arms or like be like kind of focused on the gait of someone's step
Yeah.
and like how they move. But I've been trying to focus on that a bit. I remember the first time I noticed it was way back. I think it was when I was in high school or something, and I was watching one of the photographers that worked for the newspaper that came out to photograph one of the events, sort of take photographs right at like a certain position in the motion. I think it was a person practicing the cello, and it was at a certain time when they would pull the string out and their elbow to a certain point. That's like the time they would take the picture every time. And that was the first time I kind of had the concept of like, oh, okay, like I need to like pay attention to like the shape of it
Hmm.
or like how it's shaped. And like they only want to take the picture when it comes to the shape that they want to get, but they really don't want to get like this one or, whatever off gesture it is that they're
Right.
making with their body. They want like the one that's at like the max, like the height of the action. It's interesting how that was, but I remember like kind of thinking about that a little bit and then thinking about it a bit here with this photo of you like walking around where your arms are. There's a couple other ones that are coming up too where I've been trying to work on like moving the camera to like find different parallels and stuff.
That's
Trying to
cool.
focus on line. It's helped a lot.
Yeah, that's a good thing to pay attention to. Or it's an interesting part of the photo because it really does make all of the difference for it. If the
Yeah.
person's leg or arm is in a weird or just off spot and
Yeah.
the photo
There's some
really doesn't work all the way or it's not complete.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Line
have
is a
that
big
tight
part of
feeling.
it. Line's a huge part of photography or of just like putting a photograph together that I'm trying to like work on more of sort of manipulating myself and my position to try and figure out like how to line things up or how to make sort of just just lines
Mhm.
or indescript kind of use of diagonals or something to kind of give focus to a section of the photograph. I see that in a couple of photographs that worked out pretty well. Like there's one of the camp that I took that I like the
Oh,
shape.
I know the one
Just
you're talking about.
some of those are kind of interesting, but I've been trying to work on that a little bit, which is really just sort of basic stuff a lot of the time. But it's better, and it's probably helping me out from sort of a rut of some of the landscape stuff that I have, where it's a lot of really cool landscapes sort of cut right in half. If you can imagine, there's some like horizon line right about the middle of the thing, and it's sort of cool, sort of colored stuff above, and cool sort of colored stuff below. But it's sort of this half and half line that cuts
Mhm.
through a lot of photos. Maybe a lot of landscape photos that are like a lake or something like that. There's a bunch of those, but there's just some sort of concept of like a horizon line that I'm trying to break up. I'm trying to use different sort of like shapes or tones or kind of I don't know, just any kind of compositional element that I can use that sort of breaks up that horizontal flat like two-dimensional plane that I'm photographing. I want to try and get more of that three-dimensional sweep or draw or uh, like vanishing point too. It'll be tough. It's all right though. It's kind of fun putting together different little photography things. And thanks for being a little model in my picture, Marina.
Hey, thanks for taking such a cool photo of me. I
Yeah.
really like this one. I like the compression of it that you can see of
Oh
just
yeah.
the huge Heart Mountain
It makes
in the
such a big difference.
background.
That's how you really get it. You gotta have compression. You gotta be kind of far away. You gotta be using a lot
Mhm.
of compression in sort of a wide angle of view, which means you gotta be like a quarter mile away. But it's so cool though when you get that. That's what I
It
really
does.
like is how it just really pulls the shape of Heart Mountain up. Where and you really get that immenseness that it seems like you see with your eye,
Mhm.
or at least you perceive with your eye, like, wow, that's big, that's tall. But when you take a picture of it, it's just so flat and thin, you know? And that's why, yeah, I really like this picture of like how it just kind of rises up beside you, but it looks like a big, tall mountain. It's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Heart
I
Mountain's a
really
huge one.
like the photos that I took with the telephoto out there
Oh
too.
yeah, it was cool. I'm really glad we stopped that one. I think it's been pretty
Me
cool.
too. It's a cool one.
Ooh. Thanks for going on little trips to take pictures with me.
Thank you so much. I loved that trip. It was really cool getting to be in a kind of different spot out there than we've
Oh
been
yeah,
before.
I'm
I
glad that we
really
got
liked
to
it.
go to a different spot and check out a few different things. It was really fun, like just setting up our own dispersed campsite, going around checking
I
things out.
loved it. Yeah, that's my favorite thing to do. It's so
Yeah,
cool that you can just drive out there and set up really wherever you want to,
it's
and
so
then
cool.
hike around wherever you want to.
Yeah, I really like that
I
part of it
really
too,
enjoyed
and
it.
and that it's really made pretty easy in sagebrush out there and in that type of landscape. But there's a ton of that out there that I want to go around and explore with you.
Me too. Yeah, I want to get back out there again for another trip soon.
Ooh, I want to get back out there pretty soon too. But Marina, thanks so much for doing this podcast.
Thanks for having me on your show, Billy.
I'm glad we're doing some little recording tonight. It's been pretty fun.
It's been pretty cool.
So, on behalf of Marina Hansen, my name is Billy Newman, and thank you guys very much for listening to this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast.